guys, welcome back to another episode of the CDP Growth Show. On today's episode, I'm joined by Brandon, who is the current head of growth at Engagio. Brandon, how you doing?
Pretty good, can't complain. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, Brandon, before we kind of, dive into the main part of the podcast, just give my audience like a really, really quick, 30-second rundown of, first of all, what Engagio is as a platform, and then really kind of who the platform's for.
Yeah, absolutely. So Engagio is an account-based marketing platform. It helps you connect all of your different data and make sure that your team is working off of all of that same, information so that they can more effectively go after their target accounts. And we give you the ability to actually do that outreach and also measure all of your efforts, all of your activity.
And we'll have quite I guess like a variety, so typically B2B SaaS founders that kind of listen to this show, so like I'd be kind of keen to get your perspective on really kind of what, because obviously your platform involves a lot of kind of ABM and that side of things, so like who is the platform really for as a company? Like what types of companies would typically be using the platform?
Yeah, totally. Companies that are really trying to execute ABM, so those companies that have a bigger price tag on it, right? You're selling higher ACV, you're selling to multiple stakeholders, and multiple people are involved on your team too. So it's really making sure everything is under that account view, and then again being able to measure everything under the account view. So it's really entirely based around the account, whereas a lot of systems these days are still based on the lead, and then they're trying to hack things together to give you that account view. So whereas Engagio was the foundation, that was the reason we started the software.
Awesome. Okay. And just to kind of give the audience kind of context for, how you've kind of got into this world of SaaS, right? And kind of how you've got into this crazy world of B2B SaaS marketing, how did you kind of initially get your start? Was Engagio one of your first roles, or just to kind of give the audience context?
Yeah. So actually right out of school, I was super passionate about health and wellness. I got a personal training certification.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And a health coach certification, nutrition, like the whole nine yards. And I was, I thought all I had to do was hang my shingle up, and clients would come pounding down my door. I was grossly mistaken. They didn't teach you anything about business. Exactly. They didn't teach you anything about business. And just, it's my personality to really just dive full in. Like one of my mottos is, if you're going to get wet, you might as well go swimming. So really ended up diving into the business side, and ended up loving sales, marketing, service. Grew my practice to the point where I was turning down clients, and I had to actually give them to my fellow colleagues. And then they're like, wow, you really figured this out. You should teach me how to do business, sales and marketing. Then the school that I went to was like, hey, you should actually just come be a salesperson for us. So I went over there, and that's when I really got introduced to more formal business and more software. So we were selling trainings and certifications for health and wellness professionals. And then I distinctly remember when I sat down with the head of marketing, and she's like, marketing's not an art, marketing is a science. And I was like, no, isn't it just the arts and crafts department? She's like, no, let me show you. So she was badass Marketo, like she was one of those Marketo champions, right?
Early days. Yeah,
exactly. Like she was legit. And she's like, all right, if I put in $1 here, 28 days later, it's coming out $1.34 here. If I put in $1 over here, 27 days later, it's going to come out $1.27 here. And it's like, oh shit, that's cool. I want to know that. So that's when I made that transition over to the marketing side. And then I actually landed at Engagio when John Miller, the co-founder of Marketo, saw my work, and he's like, hey, you should come do marketing for me. And I was like, okay.
Why not?
Why not? So it's been over 3.5 years here at Engagio for me.
Got it. And have you always been the head of growth, or did you kind of work your way up as like a junior role, or?
Yeah, so I was the second marketing hire, just a few weeks after the first, and him and I just kind of built everything from the ground up. He hasn't been here in a few years, but I'm still going strong.
Awesome. And obviously, kind of given the current climate, everyone's working from home now, and there's a lot of questions in the air, right, about like, should we be using ABM? And how does it play into kind of the overall strategy, right, given the current climate? So I'd be really interested, just to obviously, you're fully immersed, right, in the
Yep.
ABM world. So just to kind of hear your perspective on how you think ABM is going to play a fit now over the next few weeks and months for companies that, should really be using it, and just your overall thoughts on it and how it is relevant to now.
Absolutely. I think it's more relevant than ever because you have to deliver a relevant message, a more relevant message to a more specific audience. And that's really what ABM is all about. So we have clients right now that are like, yeah, I'm doubling down on ABM. I cannot risk sending an irrelevant message to someone in, say, the travel industry or hospitality industry, because that's going to land on deaf ears and it could actually be hurting your brand. So people right now are really focusing on ABM. And, it's really forcing a lot of people. It's this function, or this forcing function that's like, all right, we dabbled around for a little bit. It's time to get serious. How do we actually do ABM, right? Because, a lot of people we've seen, they've seen a lot of success over the last, decade, because we've been in a strong economy with mediocre programs. It's not going to cut it anymore. So it's forcing people to actually figure it out. It's about focus. All right, how do I actually do ABM? What are those key components that make a strong ABM program? And we got to go figure that out. So that is things like your data, right? It's getting that's the foundation of any good ABM program. That's the foundation of any good marketing program. Sales process. It's data.
Yeah, and I think again, I think a lot of people, I'm sure you see this as well, right? A lot of people say they do ABM, right? But actually, a lot of the time, they're doing a demand gen campaign or they're sending a cold email campaign, right? So I'd be really just interested to hear kind of for you what ABM really means at a kind of foundational level, and then some of the strategies that you can use as part of that ABM campaign that really tie it all together.
Yeah, totally. So ABM really is all about targeting the right accounts and then delivering a relevant message to your buyers across the entire customer journey. Right. So a lot of people look at ABM actually for like top of funnel, where ABM is great mid funnel. It's actually great post sale too. So if you are looking at doing true enterprise deals, a lot of those companies, their job is actually to get more from their existing customers. I've got one friend who he's a true enterprise rep. He's got one account. It's a customer account, and he has to figure out how to get $35 million from them this year.
Jesus, wow.
If that's not ABM, I don't know what is, right? So, of course he's getting paid for that too, quite handsomely, but that's a hard job to do if you don't have all of your data, all of your systems, everything talking to each other, everyone on your team, because he pulls in a lot of different subject matter experts. He pulls in engineering, he pulls in users from his team, right? And it really is a team effort to go after these true enterprise accounts. So and there are companies on the other end of the spectrum too, that's, we're doing 20K deals. You're going to be doing ABM, but it's definitely on a different level. You will rely a little bit more on demand gen too for that air cover. Exactly. So like in Engagio, we're split down the middle. We still do, like, though we are an ABM company, we still do plenty of demand gen to support that ABM.
And it's interesting as well what you said there about ABM doesn't just have to be something that you do right from the very top of the funnel, right? It can be something that like you said, you use inbound as that kind of inbound filter, right? And then you filter the leads out to do more of a kind of ABM style campaign, right? So it can be done in an approach in lots of different ways, right? But I just think it's you've really got to assess it based on what's the ACV, and if you're like that example there where you're trying to get 35 million from one company, it's going to be more of a kind of triangular down approach, right?
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah, makes sense. And kind of more now, kind of moving on to your kind of tech stack, and obviously I'm sure there'll be quite a lot of kind of ABM heavy tools and kind of involved. So I'd be really interested to hear just some of the kind of key softwares that you guys have put in place, since you've kind of been there, and then just some of the tools that you kind of continue to grow with, up until this point now, and just like I said, some of the key softwares you put in place with Engagio.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything really is around 3 key pieces of software, and that's Engagio, Marketo, and Salesforce. So they all do talk to each other. And Engagio really is our source of truth for everything. So we take all of your data from your marketing automation, from your CRM, from all your different sales engagement platforms. We put a pixel on your website. We hook into your email client so that we're looking at things like inbound and outbound emails, stuff on your calendar, et cetera, et cetera. So Engagio really is our source of truth for everything.
It's that centralized point.
Exactly. It's where all of that data from your disparate systems are really talking to each other and reconciling. And then, a sales rep can look at the data, and a marketer can look at the data, and a customer success manager can look at the data, and it's all the same data. Whereas in the past, marketers are in Marketo, they're looking at one thing. Sales reps are in Salesforce. And how often do they? Exactly. So which one's right? So, so we're looking at it, one thing across the entire account view with Engagio. And then, once you have all that data in one place, delivered in a timely manner too, then you can actually act appropriately on that, right? You can make decisions with that data a lot better. So then we can kick that off to like an outreach sequence. So we're on outreach. I also run the sales development or the account development team here at Engagio, and we're heavy outreach users. But of course we plug into your SalesLoft 2 or whatever sales engagement platform you're using. We are also big Uberflip users. So Uberflip is a just great way to deliver a good content experience. Content, it really is at the core of AV.
Personalized content. Yeah,
exactly. Personalized. And of course, content's at the core of demand gen and inbound. So Uberflip is key. Our sales reps use the Uberflip Chrome extension. And then, of course, we track all that back, pipe that back into Engagio. So we're looking at all interactions, emails clicked, links clicked in the email, landing pages, the whole journey through that content is really tailored with Uberflip. And again, pipe back to an Engagio. And then the other key one that I absolutely love, I think we talked about it too, is metadata.io.
Oh, I love metadata. Yeah.
I love metadata. So if anyone out there hasn't checked out metadata, that is a growth marketer's dream right there.
I think there's another one called Infla2, where it's that kind of the whole point is that person-based advertising. And I just think they're very, very cool tools. And I think we're going to start to see, I'm sure you'll agree, really the power of these tools over the next few years, tools like metadata, and just how powerful they're going to be in terms of delivering content and ads.
Yeah, the thing that I love about technology is like it helps you scale your ABM. So it's not doing ABM for you necessarily. It's just
scaling that process.
Yeah, exactly. And you like there are things that machines and that computers are better at than humans, and that's things like aggregating your data, doing things like lead to account matching, remembering to do certain processes over and over again, right? Remember to follow up with this person at this time, but you still can't automate the human process in sales. Like what are humans better at? That's building relationships, that's building rapport, that's taking a broader context into account. So I look at that data, but at the end of the day, I'm still selling to another human. So it's kind of balancing the personalization with the automation.
Makes sense. So in a way, really, Engagio kind of acts as like almost like a mini kind of CDP platform, kind of as that centralized unit in the middle that's unifying everything together.
Exactly. A lot of people do know us as the ABM platform, but again, like you said, we are really a CDP at our core.
Cool. Makes sense. And a question that I really, really like asking, particularly companies at your stage where you're in that kind of growth phase and you've been growing a lot over the last few years. How do you make sure as a company that particularly like your role as the head of growth, how do you make sure that you really kind of get the most out of the tech stack, right? Because I think what we see with a lot of particularly early stage companies, right, they're adding on software very quickly, and they're a lot of the time adding in software that they just don't need to be adding on, right? So, and it creates a lot of overlap, and it just a lot of mess, very quickly. So I'd be interested to hear kind of how you made sure internally that these softwares are in place for the right reason, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes 100% sense. And I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
we see this all the time, right? Like there was a stat from Marketo. I think it's 20 something percent of users only use Marketo for email and landing pages.
It's
Like
crazy.
Marketo is so powerful,
Beast. Yeah.
right? But if you're only using a small fraction of it, yeah, it's like, all right, what else could I be doing? Am I getting the most out of my money? Because I know I'm paying
Mm.
Marketo a decent amount of
Yeah.
money every single year, and
Yeah.
it's worth it too. That's why people pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But on the other side of that, because it's a balance, though, right? Because I don't want to force
Of
my team
course.
to use something that they're not going to use if it's just costing them more
Mm.
time to try to figure it out, and then they try to use it, and then they don't like it, and then they spin cycles, right? So it
Yeah.
definitely is this balance. So it's really trying to figure out. It's like starting with strategy. So this is one mistake that I see companies make all the time. It's just like we want to do ABM. Let's just go buy Engagio, and then I have an ABM platform that means I'm doing ABM. Well, not
Yeah.
necessarily, right?
It's just a tool to help you. Yeah.
Exactly. So let's make
Yeah.
sure this is one, the right strategy for us. And then two, let's make sure we have the tools in place to really support that strategy. And I mean, not every customer of Engagio uses every single function of Engagio either. And I think that'd be crazy to expect them to do that. But as long as they are getting the most out of what they bought Engagio for,
Yeah.
and that's definitely a win. But if you have we keep going back to this because we're talking about CDPs here, but like it's the data. Just make sure all of your data is talking to each other, and you really do need that centralized place. And then because once your data is talking to each other, then one, you can make better decisions on who you're going after and how you're going after them. And then two, you can actually measure everything. So I don't want to go to 5 different technology and then pull data and then try to aggregate it on my own and then try to figure out, all right, what's actually working or what's not. Or every platform has their own measurement tools these days, right? So and some of them are a little bit of black boxes. They don't actually tell you how they're coming up with this predictive score or whatever it might be. It's some proprietary software or algorithm or whatever, and you just kind of got to trust it sometimes.
Trust
But,
it. Yeah.
yeah, but I want everything talking to each other.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. And, just let's say theoretically, obviously we're talking about ABM, right? And I know you've kind of touched over a few things already, but let's say a company, they've got a ACV of, let's say, 50K, right? That's like their kind of annual contract. And they're, thinking about ABM, up until this point, they've been doing a lot of demand gen. What advice would you give to them in terms of how they should be thinking about implementing? And obviously, drawing it back to the kind of tech stack in terms of certain softwares they should be thinking about putting in place, because ABM I feel like it is a bit of a minefield when it comes to the tech stack, right? There's so many softwares out there that do different things, and it quickly becomes quite confusing, right, for the kind of average marketer, right? So I'd be really interested to hear just kind of how you should be. I know you've already touched over a few things, but just kind of how you should be approaching it as a marketer.
Yeah, so there are certain things that are kind of table stakes for ABM, like lead to account matching and routing, right? So if leads come in, I want to make sure that they are matched with that account and then routed to the right rep, because nothing's worse than you're in a big deal. They finally bring the CMO on board, and the CMO has to, like, they're kind of starting, maybe not from the very beginning, but they kind of have to, they're going to have to do their research. So they demo request, they come in, sales rep reaches out, completely cold, doesn't have any context for what's happening there. Yeah, you're going to send her irrelevant message, and it's going to turn that CMO off and be like, these guys don't know what they're talking about here. So we really want to make sure there are certain things in place, like that lead to account matching. So I mean that's one of the things that, like,
the foundations, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Engagio does do that, though. You don't, like, again, I don't care if you use Engagio or not for that. That's table stakes for ABM. There are a bunch of other companies that do lead to account matching well.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so once they've kind of got that kind of lead to account, is there any other tools, again, from your, like, on the content side, for example, or thinking about advertising, because there's all these different things, right? And obviously is very dependent on the company. So I know we can't get too
Yeah.
granular, right? Which is just some of the other things that you should be thinking about as a marketer.
Yeah, totally. So I think companies that are just getting started can like it serves them well to take what's working already and then just do that a little bit more targeted. So
Yeah.
for example, like maybe my ads are doing pretty well, and maybe it's time for me to actually narrow that audience a little bit more. And when I narrow that audience, I can send a more relevant message. So I'm creating some new graphics, some new campaigns, some new messaging, some new CTAs, and then some new landing pages, new content, new nurture streams, all for a more specific audience. And then, once you can prove that out, that, yeah, this is going to work, then you can actually look at implementing a tool to help you do that. So I never like it, like in my career, I've never gone in and saying, how can I just automate this right away? It's like, no, let me start this slowly. Let me make sure that I can prove this out. And then, right, like I come up with my hypothesis, I do fast testing as low risk as I can, and then I can start to scale that. Once I realize that I can scale this, then I can bring a technology on to automate it. And then I put that on autopilot and then, move on to the next thing that I have to test out. And that's how you build a real growth machine in my mind. It's like, let's test all these systems. Let's make sure they're up and running properly. Then
Before
automate.
we go and invest heavily.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time, you have these particularly early stage companies. They raise a big round of investment, right? And then before you know it, they've got 10 different technologies in place before they've even gone to market and tried, like you said, tested, tried, and then actually brought on the technology. So I think it's so key that you do go and do that initial testing first with whatever strategies you're implementing, and then you bring on the softwares, like you said, to kind of automate them specific functions.
Exactly. And a big piece of it too that I think some people, some marketers, some companies miss is like, what's my success metric here? What am I actually measuring against? Whereas I'm just going to test it. Okay, how do you know if that's successful? How do you know if you should keep testing or cut it and move on to the next thing? So I'm really big on, in those initial phases, in those strategy and planning sessions, really figuring out, all right, what am I measuring against? How do I know if that's successful? And more importantly, how do I know when to cut this and move on to the next thing? So define that up front and then write out your hypotheses. And then, 2 weeks, I like to do 2-week sprints. 2 weeks later, all right, let's see how that measures up.
And then you kind of take it from there. Yeah,
exactly.
It should always be focused on, what's the outcome? What are we trying to achieve? Did we hit it? If we didn't, okay, let's not go and pay Salesforce, 6 figures for the next year, right?
Exactly.
Or go and pay any of these technology providers. Yeah, I think it's such a key point. Yeah, such a key point. And to kind of wrap things up in terms of a question that I really like asking, right, is a bit of a final tough question. There's never one answer to this, right? There's never like a single answer.
Totally.
Just impossible. But if there was one metric in your mind, particularly from kind of the ABM mindset, what would be that one metric for you that's just vital, as a marketer, as a kind of ABM marketer, to be tracking across the funnel?
Yeah, so I would have to say engagement metrics, engagement score. So
content, is that like content engagement or just engagement from accounts?
Just overall engagement from accounts. And so we measure at Engagio, we measure that in minutes. So we have a concept that's called engagement minutes. So my team can look at an account and say, this account has 50 minutes of engagement. They know what that means. Whereas, previously we do lead scoring, right? And lead scoring out of Marketo, and, lead comes in, a sales rep looks at that and says, this lead has a score of 50. I have no idea what that means as a sales rep. I didn't set up that scoring. That doesn't mean much to me. But if I say this account has a score of 50 minutes of engagement,
that's so much more concrete.
Yeah, exactly. And then we can start to look at weighting your minutes too. So if a CMO comes in, I'm going to give that a little bit more weight. I'm going to give it maybe 1.5 times the engagement for any specific piece of content or any specific
compared to like a account executive or exactly.
We see people interact. We see either interns or
Mm-hmm.
advisors or things
Mm-hmm.
like consultants, those don't move
Yeah.
the needle at all for us. So maybe I give them a fraction, or I can even say zero, give them 0 minutes. And then I can look
Okay.
at
Yeah.
other things too, like the content and where it's at in the funnel. So if it's early stage content, yeah, maybe it just gets 1 minute, like one wait. But if it's a real late stage piece of content and I know this content usually converts, we can say maybe it's,
Mm.
1.25 times the wait. So
Yeah.
weighting all your
But I
different
guess,
content, personas, etc.
yeah, I guess as well, if you're getting a lot of engagement at the top of the funnel, from a CMO, that probably means that he's, very interested. It's a very kind of a very good leading indicator if he's consuming a lot, even at the top of the funnel, right?
Exactly. And then I can
Yeah.
get to, a marketing qualified account and a sales ready
Mm.
account sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, like you said, a CMO matters a
Mm.
lot more. And that
Then,
just
yeah.
shows a higher, intent
Mm.
of actually caring about ABM or whatever
Mm-hmm.
you're selling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And where again, where do you think, just from observing the kind of market of founds and other heads of growth, and where do you think a lot of people go wrong when they track the kind of funnel in terms of the metrics of are they kind of misplacing their attention? Where do you think a lot of people go wrong when they track the funnel in terms of metrics they're tracking?
I think a lot of people who are just new to ABM, they're still
Mm,
tracking lead metrics and
mm,
through no fault of their own, right? We've trained them in the last 10 years with all of our different technology to really nail
yeah,
that lead funnel. But
yeah,
how are you supposed to be account based when you're still
yeah,
on measuring success on a lead on leads, right?
yeah, of
So
course.
they really don't have a good system in place for looking at everything, and not only just looking at metrics, but also doing true attribution. So
Mm,
I really need to be able to do attribution across my entire customer
mm,
journey. And then from there, I can look at, all right, what was it that made an account move from,
mm.
one stage to another?
Yeah.
So
What was the content piece? What was,
yeah,
the granular pieces?
what was that
Mm,
campaign? So I can look at attribution, but I can also look at influence too, because
yeah,
ABM is as much of measuring quality as it is quantity.
of course. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, of
that's the
course.
tough piece about ABM is you have fewer
Mm,
accounts, so you're gonna
quality
have
matters so much more.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Quality of engagement. Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. Well, look, Brandon, it's been really, really awesome having you on the podcast. I love chatting things all ABM. It's one of my
Same
kind of
here.
passions. So, yeah, I hope you've enjoyed coming on. And
Absolutely,
guys,
100%. I could
awesome,
geek out
awesome.
about
Well,
this stuff
guys,
all day.
I agree. I agree. Well, look, guys, I will see you in the next episode of the CDP Growth Show. See ya.